Have you ever noticed how you seem to be drowning in everyone else's pain? You care more deeply than most, and it leaves you exhausted, anxious, and overwhelmed. You're the friend who always knows when something's wrong, the colleague who feels the tension in every meeting, the family member who carries the emotional weight of everyone around you. You walk into a room and immediately absorb the stress, the sadness, the unspoken anger floating in the air, while everyone else seems to move through life with some invisible emotional shield. You feel everything as if it were your own. It's like you're living without psychological skin. Society calls you too sensitive. You call yourself broken. But what if both of those labels are completely wrong? What if I told you that your overwhelming sensitivity isn't your weakness? It's actually the raw material for a kind of power most people can't even imagine. What if the very traits you've been taught to see as burdens are actually the foundation for an almost supernatural level of emotional intelligence and personal authority? What if your greatest vulnerability could become your most formidable strength? There's a transformation that happens to people like you, usually after you've been pushed to your absolute breaking point. What if the traits you see as burdens are the foundation for a power so formidable it can change everything? This isn't just a theory, it's a psychological pattern documented in the private case files of Carl Jung. He didn't just understand this process, he witnessed it. And what he saw, a transformation that turns the most gentle souls into the most unbreakable. He considered one of the most profound and disturbing shifts in the human personality. He saw it not as a breakdown, but as the awakening of a warrior. Today, we're going to explore that transformation. We're going to dive into the hidden psychology behind your empathic overwhelm, uncover the real reason why you suffer, and discover how you can transmute your deepest pain into your greatest power. This is the story of the day you snap, and what happens when you finally learn to fight back. Before we dive in, if you're here because you're ready to believe your greatest vulnerability could be your most formidable strength, affirm it in the comments right now with, "My sensitivity is my strength." You feel everything, not just your own emotions, but the anxiety radiating from your coworker 3 cubicles away, the depression your friend won't admit to, the rage your partner carries but never expresses. You walk into a room and it's like someone cranked up the emotional volume to 11. Everyone else seems to move through the world with some kind of invisible shield. They can sit in a crowded restaurant and just eat their food. Meanwhile, you're absorbing the stress from the arguing couple at table 6, the loneliness from the elderly man dining alone, the exhaustion from the overworked waitress. It's exhausting, isn't it? You're part of something Carl Jung identified over a century ago, what he called innate sensitiveness. Back in 1912, this brilliant psychiatrist noticed that some people are simply born wired differently. They feel more deeply, react more intensely, and carry the weight of the world like a second skin. Jung estimated this affected about 1/4 of humanity. Modern research suggests it's closer to 1 or 2% who experience this level of overwhelming sensitivity. You're not just highly sensitive, you're operating with what scientists now call hyper-responsive mirror neurons. Your brain literally reflects and absorbs the emotional states around you as if they were your own. But here's what nobody tells you about this gift that feels like a curse. You don't just absorb random emotions floating around. You're unconsciously becoming a container for people's deepest, darkest secrets, the parts of themselves they can't bear to look at. That critical inner voice that tells you you're too much, too sensitive, too needy. Half the time, it isn't even yours. You're carrying the shadow projections of everyone around you, their repressed shame, their unacknowledged fear, their disowned anger. You've become what Jung called a shadow carrier, and the weight is crushing you. But what if I told you this overwhelming sensitivity isn't your weakness? What if it's actually the raw material for a kind of power most people can't even imagine? To understand how, we need to dive deeper into what's really happening beneath the surface of your awareness. If you've always felt like you're tuned into a different frequency than everyone else, comment below. I'm wired differently. What's really happening beneath the surface goes deeper than you think. Jung discovered something that will blow your mind. Most human connections aren't actually relationships at all. They're what he called participation mystique, a fancy term for psychological fusion. It's like being one sheep in a flock, where individual consciousness dissolves into a collective emotional soup. Think about it. When was the last time you could tell where your feelings ended and someone else's began? This isn't some mystical energy transfer. It's a developmental state, one that most people grow out of. But you never did. Your psychological boundaries are like a house with all the doors and windows wide open. Every emotion, every unexpressed feeling, every piece of psychological debris floating around just walks right in. And here's where it gets really dark. You're not just absorbing random emotional static. And here's the truth that might be hard to hear. You haven't just been a sponge, you've been a target. You have become an unconscious dumping ground for the one thing people cannot bear to face in themselves. What Jung called the shadow. All those ugly, uncomfortable parts of themselves that people refuse to own. Their greed masquerading as your guilt. Their rage disguised as your anxiety, their inadequacy wearing the mask of your self-doubt. Jung was crystal clear about this. Emotions are most contagious. They spread like wildfire, especially to those without proper psychological immune systems. And you're living with compromised immunity, that narcissistic friend who always leaves you feeling drained. They're not just taking your energy, they're projecting their deep, unacknowledged neediness onto you, using you as a psychological trash can for feelings they can't bear to experience themselves. Your boss, who somehow makes you feel incompetent even when you're performing well. They're dumping their own imposter syndrome right into your undefended psyche. You've spent your whole life thinking you're just sensitive. But the truth is more disturbing. You're living in a state of chronic psychological infection, absorbing the emotional waste products of everyone around you. And because you identify with kindness and compassion, because your whole identity is built on being the helper, the giver, the one who never says no, you've banished your own healthy selfishness, your natural boundaries, your righteous anger into the darkness. This creates unbearable pressure. Your conscious mind is at war with your unconscious. And eventually, something has to give. When that pressure reaches its breaking point, when your psyche can no longer contain this toxic overflow, something extraordinary happens. If you're finally understanding why certain people and places leave you feeling so drained, comment, "I see the trap." And then it happens. The day you can't get out of bed. The moment you look in the mirror and don't recognize the exhausted stranger staring back. The night you finally admit that everything you've been trying to be, the endless giver, the selfless helper, the one who always says yes, is slowly killing you. You call it your breakdown. Jung called it your breakthrough. But what if that collapse wasn't random? This next part is crucial. Jung realized this isn't a breakdown of your mental health. It's a controlled demolition. It is the psyche's last-ditch, desperate attempt to save you by performing radical surgery on itself. Think of it like a controlled demolition. The building has to come down because the foundation was never meant to support what you've been trying to construct on top of it. Your entire identity has been built on a lie that you can give endlessly without needing anything in return, that you can absorb everyone else's pain without it poisoning you, that you can be the perfect helper while completely ignoring your own needs. But here's what Jung understood that modern psychology often misses. Your psyche is a self-regulating system. When you push too far in one direction, when you become too giving, too selfless, too agreeable, the unconscious pushes back with equal and opposite force. All that repressed anger, all those unmet needs, all that resentment you've been shoving down because good people don't feel that way. It's been building pressure like a psychological volcano, and now it's erupting. This isn't happening to you. This is happening through you. Jung observed this pattern repeatedly in his most sensitive patients. He called it the night sea journey, a necessary descent into chaos that must precede any meaningful growth. Your breakdown isn't a sign of weakness, it's your psyche's desperate attempt to save your life. The person you've been pretending to be, that selfless, endlessly available, perpetually understanding version of yourself, was never real. It was a mask, a persona built to win love and avoid conflict, but completely disconnected from your authentic nature. And now that mask is cracking. Everything you thought you knew about yourself is dissolving. The meaning you've built your life around feels hollow. You're lost, confused, and terrified because suddenly you can no longer hide from the person you've been running from your entire life. In this darkness, you're about to meet someone you've never truly faced, the real you, the one with needs, boundaries, and the capacity for righteous anger. If you've been through a collapse that was actually a turning point, or you're in one now and choose to trust the process, comment, "My breakdown is my breakthrough." This is where it gets terrifying and transformative. In the wreckage of your breakdown, you finally come face to face with the person you've spent your entire life avoiding. The shadow version of yourself, the one who feels rage when people take advantage of your kindness. The one who wants to say no, to put yourself first, to protect your own energy like it's precious currency. The one who's been screaming from the basement of your psyche while you've been playing the perfect helper upstairs. Jung called this your shadow. Not just the bad parts you've rejected, but everything that didn't fit your conscious self-image. Your anger isn't evil. It's your boundary system trying to come online. Your selfishness isn't morally wrong. It's your self-preservation instinct finally demanding attention. But here's the mind-bending part. Jung discovered that the shadow isn't just a cesspit of negative traits. Hidden in that darkness are what he called a number of good qualities. Your normal instincts, your appropriate reactions, your realistic insights, your creative impulses. All the strength you banished because it didn't match your image of who you should be. You've been carrying a treasure chest in the basement while starving upstairs. I know what you're thinking. But if I embrace my anger, won't I become selfish? Won't I hurt people? This is the fear that's kept you trapped. But Jung understood something revolutionary. Integration doesn't mean acting out. It means conscious ownership. When you integrate your shadow, you don't become a monster. You become dangerous to anyone who would exploit you. You become whole. And here we see the ultimate secret of the empath's power, that rage you were taught to bury. It's not evil, it's the rocket fuel for your boundaries. The sensitivity that once made you a victim is now the very thing that makes you untouchable. That selfishness you've rejected, it transforms into healthy self-care and the ability to prioritize your own needs without guilt. That capacity for cruelty you've denied, it becomes your ability to see through manipulation and refuse to be taken advantage of. This is the alchemical work Jung spoke of, turning psychological lead into gold. The very qualities that terrify you are the ones that will set you free. Jung put it perfectly. Whoever is possessed by their shadow is always standing in his own light and falling into his own traps. But when you own your darkness consciously, something miraculous happens. You stop being a victim of your own repressed energy, and you start becoming the empowered, integrated person you were always meant to be. If you've started to embrace your own shadow, comment below, "I am becoming whole." And then everything changes. You still feel everything, but now you choose what to do with what you feel. It's like someone installed a sophisticated filtration system in your mind. The emotions are still there, but they no longer own you. You walk into that same crowded restaurant where you once absorbed everyone's chaos, and something is fundamentally different. You can sense the anxiety at table 6, but it stays at table 6. You notice the loneliness of the elderly man, but it doesn't become your loneliness. You feel the waitress's exhaustion, but you don't carry it home. This is what Jung called the balance between eros and logos, feeling and thinking working in perfect harmony. Your empathy has evolved from raw emotional contagion into strategic intelligence. You can spot the energy vampires from across the room now, not because you've become cold, but because you've become conscious. That charming colleague who always leaves you feeling drained. You see their neediness before they even open their mouth. That friend who calls only when they need something. Your intuition flags the manipulation before your compassion kicks in. It's like developing psychological X-ray vision. Your boundaries stop being fragile walls and become an intelligent fortress. They are smart membranes, yes, but they are also electrified fences against psychological predators. This is your sensitivity evolving into a weapon, not for attack, but for perfect, absolute defense. You can love deeply without losing yourself. You can offer support without becoming a dumping ground. You can say no without guilt because you finally understand that protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's sacred. Comment if people started treating you differently when you found your backbone. The center of your psychological universe has shifted. Jung called this moving from ego-centered living to self-centered living. Your ego, that part of you that tried so hard to be liked, to avoid conflict, to keep everyone happy, is no longer running the show. Instead, you're guided by something deeper, more authentic, more unshakable. This is why manipulation no longer works on you. External validation can't move you because your validation comes from within. Guilt trips bounce off you because you're no longer operating from a place of desperate people-pleasing. You've become what Jung called an individuated person, not because you're isolated from others, but because you finally know where you end and others begin. The transformation isn't about becoming less sensitive. It's about becoming consciously sensitive. Your gift is no longer your curse because you've learned to wield it like the precision instrument it was always meant to be. If you are learning that protecting your own energy is not selfish but sacred, comment, "My energy is sacred." Your sensitivity was never the problem. Your unconsciousness was. Think about where this journey has taken you. You started as an unconscious sponge, absorbing every emotional toxin in your environment. You became a shadow carrier, weighted down by everyone else's disowned darkness. You hit rock bottom when your psyche couldn't bear the burden anymore. But in that breakdown, you discovered something extraordinary. The very traits you thought were destroying you were actually your greatest strengths in disguise. Your anger became your boundary system. Your selfishness transformed into sacred self-care. Your capacity for saying no evolved into your superpower. Jung understood this alchemical process perfectly. How psychological lead becomes gold through the courageous work of integration. You didn't overcome your sensitivity. You learned to wield it consciously. Now you can feel deeply and think clearly. You can love without losing yourself. You can hold space for others' pain without drowning in it. You've become what the world desperately needs. A conscious empath. Look around you. We're living in a time of unprecedented emotional chaos. Social media amplifies every feeling. Political polarization turns empathy into a weapon. People are more disconnected from their authentic selves than ever before. The unconscious emotional contagion that once trapped you is now a pandemic affecting millions. The world needs people who can navigate this chaos with both heart and wisdom. People who can feel the collective pain without being destroyed by it. People who can offer genuine compassion without enabling dysfunction. People who can recognize shadow projections and refuse to carry them. It needs you. Your journey from unconscious absorption to strategic empathy isn't just personal transformation. It's planetary healing. Every time you refuse to absorb someone's projected shame, you're breaking a cycle of unconscious transmission. Every boundary you set teaches others where healthy connection begins. Every time you model conscious sensitivity, you're showing the world what evolved empathy looks like. If you're ready to step into your power and become the conscious empath the world needs, affirm it by commenting, "I answer the call." Your breakdown wasn't your ending. It was your initiation into a higher way of being. Jung called this individuation, but you can call it what it really is: coming home to your authentic power. The question isn't whether you're an empath. The question is, will you be an unconscious one or a conscious one? Will you answer the call?